All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to try and unravel one of the most talked about, and honestly, one of the most misunderstood topics out there, Bitcoin. For some people, Bitcoin isn't just another investment. It's seen as this total game changer. They call it a revolutionary financial innovation, like a new kind of digital gold built for the internet. The whole idea? It's designed to work completely on its own, with no banks or governments pulling the strings. But then, you've got the other side of the coin. Some of the most famous investors in the world, guys like Warren Buffett, are calling it rat poison squared. And it's not just a handful of skeptics either. We're talking about 8 Nobel Prize-winning economists who've called it a giant bubble. One of them even said it should be outlawed. So yeah, strong feelings all around.
So, what's the deal? Is it a revolution or is it just rat poison? Well, to figure that out, we've got to get under the hood and see what it actually is and how it works. And we're going to start with the very first thing you'd need if you wanted to use it.
All right, Section 1, your digital wallet. So how do you actually use Bitcoin? Well, before you could even think about owning or using it, you need a place to manage it. And that's where something called a digital wallet comes in.
Okay, so the term Bitcoin wallet is actually a little misleading. You might think of your physical wallet holding cash, right? But a Bitcoin wallet doesn't really store your coins. Instead, what it holds are the secret digital keys. These keys are everything. They prove you own your Bitcoin and they're what let you spend it. Just think of it as your personal remote control for the entire Bitcoin network.
So every single wallet has 2 super important parts. First, you've got your public address. This is like your bank account number. It's totally safe to share this with anyone who wants to send you Bitcoin. But then there's the private key. This is the master password, the whole shebang. It unlocks everything and lets you spend your funds. And let me be really clear here. Never share this with anyone. If you lose this key, your Bitcoin is just gone forever. There's no forgot password link you can click.
And it's not like there's just one kind of wallet. Nope, you've got choices. And each one is basically a trade-off between how easy it is to use and how secure it is. Hot wallets are always connected to the internet. Think mobile apps, so they're great for quick, everyday stuff. Cold wallets are the opposite. They're kept completely offline, kind of like a digital safe for your life savings. But maybe the biggest choice you have to make is this. Do you let someone else, like an exchange, hold your keys, or do you take full control and truly become your own bank?
Okay, moving on to Section 2, the Bitcoin machine. So this whole be your own bank thing sounds cool, but it brings up a massive question, right? If there's no bank, no central authority, what stops me from just cheating? Counterfeiting coins or spending the same Bitcoin over and over? The answer is pretty brilliant, and it's the engine that makes this whole thing run.
The absolute heart of Bitcoin is this technology called the blockchain. And honestly, the best way to picture it is just as a giant shared accounting book, a public ledger. Every single transaction that has ever happened is written down in this book, and everyone can see it. They're all linked together in order, creating this long, unbreakable chain.
So let's say you want to send some Bitcoin. You use that private key we talked about to digitally sign the transaction. It's basically a mathematical way of proving, hey, this is my Bitcoin, and I'm okay with sending it. Once you do that, your transaction gets broadcast out to the entire network for all to see.
But how does that transaction actually get confirmed and added to that big public ledger? That's where miners come in. Just think of them as the network's accountants, except they're spread all over the world. They grab a bunch of recent transactions, put them into a block, and then they all race to solve this ridiculously hard math problem. The first one to solve it gets to add their block to the chain, and for their hard work, they get a reward, brand new Bitcoin. And get this, that's the only way new Bitcoin ever comes into existence.
And this whole process, this race, is designed to be super difficult. On purpose. The goal is for a new block to be found about every 10 minutes. This creates a really steady, predictable heartbeat for the whole network, which is what keeps it so secure and stable.
All right, Section 3, the great debate. Now, this whole setup, this decentralized public money that's secured by a global network of computers, well, that's exactly why Bitcoin is so controversial. It sparks some really fierce arguments about what it is and what it could mean for the future.
I think the number one knock against Bitcoin, the one you hear all the time, is that it's just a big speculative bubble. The critics say it has no intrinsic value. I mean, you can't eat it, it doesn't produce any profits. Its price, they argue, is based on one thing and one thing only, the hope that some greater fool will come along and pay more for it than you did.
And you can really see the two sides of this fight right here. On one side, in the bubble camp, you've got this who's who of Nobel laureates and legendary investors. But the other side, the store of value camp, they have a really powerful argument. Bitcoin's supply is totally fixed. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, period. They say that this digital scarcity makes it kind of like a digital version of gold, a place to park your money when governments are printing traditional currencies like there's no tomorrow.
So what about its darker side? The next big debate is always about this. Is Bitcoin only for criminals? For a long time, it's had this reputation for being used in shady activities, mainly because people think it's anonymous.
But here's the funny thing. Because that blockchain is a public book that anyone can read, Bitcoin is actually way more transparent than cash. Every single transaction can be traced. And the data from big analysis firms like Chainalysis shows that illegal stuff accounts for a tiny fraction of all transactions. We're talking less than 0.25%. The huge majority is just for investing and speculation.
And of course, we have to talk about the environment. You've probably heard this one a million times. Bitcoin is an environmental disaster. And look, it's true. That global race between miners to solve those puzzles and secure the network, it uses a ton of energy.
But like a lot of things with Bitcoin, the full story is a little more complicated. See, miners are always on the hunt for the absolute cheapest power they can find anywhere on Earth, and a lot of the time that leads them to renewable energy that nobody else can use. Some studies even suggest that more than half the energy comes from renewables. And while you hear it compared to the energy use of entire countries, it's also worth noting it's in the same ballpark as industries like gold mining or even the entire traditional banking system.
Okay, last section. An asset of many faces. So after all that, we're left with a big question. Why can't anyone agree on what Bitcoin actually is? And this isn't just you and me being confused. This confusion goes all the way to the top, to the people who literally write the rules for global finance.
I mean, just look at this. Governments all over the world can't even agree on what to call it. In the US alone, one agency says it's a commodity, like oil, but the IRS just calls it property. The EU made up a whole new thing called crypto assets. Go somewhere else, and it might be a crypto token or an investment target. The point is, there's absolutely no global agreement. And really, that gets to the core of why this is so tough to nail down. Bitcoin is like a chameleon. It changes depending on who's looking at it. For a programmer, it's this incredible piece of open source tech. For a trader, it's a crazy, volatile asset to make a quick buck on. For someone living under a dictatorship, it's a tool for financial freedom. For another person whose currency is collapsing, it's a lifeline. It isn't just one thing. It's a whole bunch of different things to a whole bunch of different people.
And that brings us right back to where we started. After over a decade, the fight is still raging. So, what do you think? Is Bitcoin just a short-lived speculative fever, a really cool but ultimately flawed experiment that's just going to fizzle out? Or is it the blueprint for a whole new financial world, a complete change in how we think about money itself? That's the billion-dollar or maybe trillion-dollar question that we're all still waiting for an answer to.